Hi, good evening, everyone. That's a humble request. In order to make our sessions more lively and to see your faces and to get more acquainted with you all, it would be really grateful if you all could please switch on your videos. You can mute yourself, but if it's possible, please try to switch on your videos to make the session more lively, since we are all on a virtual platform. Ma'am, I think we can start. It's exactly 7.
Yes, it's exactly 7. Please start.
Okay.
And the meeting host, please make the speaker, please pin the speaker to the screen.
Sorry, ma'am.
Atulya or Sruti, please pin the speaker's face to the
Yes.
screen.
Okay.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome everyone present here on this virtual platform to yet another very beautiful, interesting, and interactive session of Chrysalis. I'm Sia Meera, research scholar with the Research and Postgraduate Department of English, St. Aloysius College, Thrissur, Kerala. And today we are here with yet another session of Chrysalis 3 2023-24, a commemorative lecture series organized in fond remembrance of our beloved teachers Dr. Danya Menon, Reverend Father Anthony Kutikat, and Professor M.D. Paul Davis. So, on behalf of the entire Department of English and St. Aloysius College, Thrissur, I take this opportunity to welcome all present here for the lecture series of Chrysalis 3 2023-24. For the topic of today's lecture, it is Covert Misogyny, a post-feminist reading of Indian myths through Kavitha Khane's novels. And the presenter is Ms. Kuhoo Singh, research scholar with the Department of English, Indirakala Sangeet Vishwavidyalaya, Chhattisgarh. Welcome you, ma'am, to this session of Chrysalis.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
And the chair of today's session is Dr. Archana Singh, Assistant Professor and HOD, Department of English, BPG Government PG College, Northwestern Kanka, Chhattisgarh. She is working for promoting the English language in the remote and tribal areas of Chhattisgarh. And also, she is editor of the book entitled The Impact of COVID-19 in India. She has also authored a book on Sri Aurobindo's dramatic works. Uh, on behalf of the entire department, I take this opportunity to welcome you for the session of Chrysalis. Welcome, ma'am.
Meera.
Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Meera, for lovely introduction. Good evening, one and all, virtually present here. First of all, at the very outset of this academic event, I want to express my sincere gratitude to the organizers for inviting me to chair the academic lecture. Really, I feel honored and privileged. I truly appreciate this academic venture because this type of event equips students with the necessary knowledge, skills, and experiences to succeed academically and professionally while fostering personal growth and fulfillment. So, thank you very much, all the organizers, for inviting me. Really, it's an honor. It's an honor to me. Now, I want to introduce Mrs. Kuhoo Singh. Mrs. Kuhoo Singh is basically an engineer, and after doing her master's in English literature, presently she is pursuing her PhD from Indira Kala Sangeet Vishwavidyalaya, Kerala. Her hobby is writing poetry, and she has also published her collection of poetry in a book form. So now I won't take much of time, Kuhu, and we will discuss about your topic just after when your lecture will be over. So because your topic is very interesting, so now it's over to you, Kuhu. Please start.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for the introduction. And okay, so I'll start now. So is the slide visible in the, just a second. Are the slides visible?
Yes,
Yes.
visible. Yes,
Okay. So shall I start?
please, please.
Um, Good evening, respected Dr. Chako Jose, Principal, St. Aloysius College, Kerala. Respected Dr. Betsy Paul, Director, Research Center in English of St. Aloysius College, Kerala. Respected Dr. Archana Singh, the chair of this session and HOD of English Department of BPD Government PG College, Kaker, Chhattisgarh. And I also want to acknowledge, I don't know if he's present here or not, but my research supervisor, Dr. Kaustubh Ranjan, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Indra Kala Sangeet Vishwavidyalaya, Khairagarh, Chhattisgarh, and the whole organizing committee of Chrysalis. I'm extremely grateful and I would like to thank you for providing this wonderful platform and allowing me to present my views here. So, the topic of my presentation is Covert Misogyny, a post-feminist study of Indian myths through Kavitha Kane's novels. So, without further ado, let me start this session by putting up a very simple question. What do young women of 21st century India want? Only a few things, like fundamental rights, equal pay, claiming spaces, sexual freedom, and to wear what they like and marry who they like, or not marry if they like. Nowadays, women want to be mothers and women want to be child free. Women want to be accepted for and not despite their gender identity. Women want safety in their homes and in public places. Sometimes, even without the vocabulary or the articulation of desire, women want to smash the patriarchy. And they do it too in the everyday actions they perform. Women have struggled for equality and against oppression for centuries. And although some of these battles are partly won, like equal access to education and right to vote, but women are still disproportionately affected by all forms of violence and by discrimination in every aspect of their lives. And as the forms of these discrimination and oppression changed with time, so did feminist ideologies. So let's look at the brief history of feminism and how it transformed into post feminism. So as you can see in the slide, I have tried to briefly explain the very crucial three waves of feminism and the major concerns associated with them. The first wave of feminism emerged in 18th century and it focused on legal issues. Primarily, it focused on on securing rights, securing women's right to vote and property rights. In this time, as we all know, Mary Wollstonecraft published her seminal work, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, which is usually identified with first wave feminist ideologies. The second wave focused on family, domesticity, and workplace. Women tried to speak against the myth of happy housewives. Betty Friedan's 1960 work, Feminine Mystique, gave women the language to be able to articulate the dissatisfaction they felt in their role of being a mother and a wife. The third wave started with Rebecca Walker's article, Becoming the Third Wave, which attacked the white, middle class, cisgender feminism. The buzzword for third wave was intersectionality. And as we all know, intersectionality is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw to describe how a person's social and political identity combine to create different modes of privileges and discriminations. Now, let's delve directly into post feminism. So, the term post feminism is very controversial, and today we'll try to understand it. Post feminism emerged from the belief that feminism has achieved all that it could and it is an outdated movement now. You can see in the slide, in December 1989, the cover of Time magazine read, Women Face the 90s. While the copy asked, in the 80s, they tried to have it all. Now they have just plain had it. Is there a future for feminism? And that's what we are trying to explore here through post feminism. So, post feminism in itself has many meanings for women of different generations, identities, and sensibilities. For some, it clearly means that feminism is outdated and we have achieved equality. While for some, it is a backlash to the strict set of codes of second wave. And some locate post feminism within the plurality of female subjectivities and consequently free from any larger egalitarian goals. The post-feminism stands on exercise of choice, assertion of feeling, validation of femininity, and decoupling from older political positions of Indian feminism as well as mainstream Anglo-American feminism. Post-feminism remains a contentious term in our postmodern, post-truth reality, often criticized for moving the goalpost from wide swooping political and social change to an emphasis on individual agency. Any movement or ideology, like in our case feminism, that needs to stay relevant must necessarily reinvent itself. Post feminism is inevitable then. In the face of the growing unease with traditional feminism and the gaps it has failed to plug in a neoliberal urban space inhabited by a multitude of gender, caste, and class identities. Now, in this slide, I have given two definitions of post-feminism from two very famous authors, Rosalind Gill and Anne Brooks. So, according to Rosalind Gill, post-feminism emerged as a way of making sense of paradoxes and contradictions in the representation of women. So, Gill's definition clearly talks about post-feminism as a way of filling the gaps in earlier feminist movements. Now, according to Anne Brooks, post-feminism facilitates a broad-based pluralistic conception of the application of feminism and addresses the demands of marginalized, diasporic, and colonized cultures for a non-hegemonic feminism capable of giving voice to local, indigenous, and post-colonial feminisms. Brooks' definition talks about post-feminism's pluralistic approach in giving voice to marginalized, colonized, and diasporic women. Now, the emergence of post-feminism. Although the term post-feminism was used before, it was in use since 1920s already, but formally, the term post-feminism was coined by Toril Moy in her 1985 work, Sexual Textual Politics. Toril Moy has used it to describe reactions against contradictions and absences in feminism, especially the third wave and the second wave. Post-feminism, since its emergence, strives towards the next stage in gender-related societal progress and as such is often conceived as in favor of a society that is no longer defined by rigid gender roles. Post-feminism highlights the intersection of feminism with other post-philosophies such as postmodernism, post-structuralism, and post-colonialism. So post-feminism arrived in 1980s, just after the second wave. So let's look at the backlashes against the second wave that led to the emergence of post-feminism. So the first point here is individualism versus collectivism. Post-feminism challenges the second wave's emphasis on collective action and advocacy. Second wave feminism focused on sisterhood and solidarity to address systematic discriminations happening against women. However, post-feminism argues that this collectivist approach undermines women's individual agency and choices. They advocate for a more individualistic perspective, emphasizing personal development and women's right to make her own choices without being confined to a collective identity. The second wave of feminism often portrayed women as victims of patriarchal oppression, seeking to raise awareness about the victims of patriarchal oppression, seeking to raise awareness about the inequalities women faced. While this was essential in highlighting the struggles women endured, post-feminists criticized the perpetuation of victimhood narratives. They argue that such a focus might reinforce a sense of helplessness and inhibit women's self-confidence and autonomy. Second wave feminism at times tended to generalize women's experiences, assuming a universal female identity and a shared set of challenges. Post-feminism criticizes this essentialist view, advocating for a more diverse and inclusive understanding of women's experiences. Second wave feminism was also divided on the issue of sexuality, with some factions advocating for sexual liberation, which is sex positive feminism, and others were concerned about the objectification of women, which is sex negative feminism. Post feminists argue that the both approaches can be limiting and fail to capture the complexities of women's sexual experiences. They advocate for embracing diverse expressions of sexuality and recognizing women's agency in sexual choices. Post feminists challenge the binary thinking prevalent in second wave feminism, which often portrayed women as victims and men as oppressors. They argue that this binary approach oversimplifies gender dynamics and excludes the experiences of non binary and gender non conforming individuals. The post feminist critique of second wave feminism raises essential questions about the diversity of women's experiences, individual agency, and the role of intersectionality in feminist discourse. While the second wave was instrumental in initiating crucial conversations and advancing in women's rights, post feminism challenges some of its approaches and calls for a more nuanced, inclusive, and individualistic understanding of gender issues. Now we will understand the differences between third wave and post feminism, because these both concepts are simultaneous and new concepts. And as both overlap each other, what was the need of post feminism? So, as you can see in the slide, the time of emergence of both are different. Third wave is a relatively recent concept. And as we can see from the second point, the third wave can be seen as an extension of the earlier previous feminist movements or previous feminist waves, while post-feminism can be seen as a reactions. Now, the third point says the third wave's main focus was intersectionality. So while post-feminism acknowledges the intersectionality in women's experiences, its main goal is, however, promoting individualism. And as we can see from the fourth point, both consider gender as a fluid concept. The next point shows the third wave's inclination towards solidarity and sisterhood. However, post-feminism's emphasis is on personal choice rather than being confined to a collective identity. Now, as in the case of second wave also, post-feminism doesn't support the narrative of victimhood, which shows women as helpless individuals. So we can summarize this slide by saying that third wave's main focus was intersectionality, while post-feminism's main focus is personal empowerment. So since post-feminism focuses on individuality, it can be applied thoughtfully to give voice to marginalized women who do not relate to or do not identify with mainstream feminist movements. So let's see how post-feminism can give voice to marginalized women. So the first point here says diverse narratives. Post-feminism encourages diverse and individual narratives, enabling marginalized women to share their unique experiences and challenges. By embracing a broader range of stories, post-feminism can provide a space for voices of women from various backgrounds and intersections to be heard and acknowledged. In the slide, I have also talked about challenging stereotypes. So the post-feminism's emphasis on individualism can be used to challenge and dismantle harmful stereotypes that have marginalized women for years. So by giving a voice to marginalized women, post-feminism challenges oppressive structures of the society and paves a way for revaluation of power dynamics. And the last point in the slide talks about fostering solidarity. So by giving voice to the marginalized women, post-feminism facilitates connections and alliances between diverse groups of women, fostering a stronger and more inclusive feminist movement. So I think now we have discussed post-feminism enough. So let's talk about our post-feminist author. Kavitha Kane is a contemporary Indian mythofiction author born in 1966. She is an author of the new era of retelling. She has written 7 novels till now. Her novels are extremely entertaining because she talks about the lesser known characters of her mythology like Saraswati, Satyavati, Uruvi, Urmila, etc. She acknowledges the patriarchy in her myths, and she has said, if women have not been portrayed in a proper light, it's because of misogyny and chauvinism, which made us all myopic and did not allow us to see women for their enormous strength and conviction. We need to return them into their original self by again using mythology as a tool to show what they originally were. This quote by her clearly shows her motive to bring out the plurality in women's experiences by talking about the ignored and misunderstood female characters of our mythology, which post-feminism is all about. But why retelling? Suddenly, we are seeing this trend of retelling or revisionist mythology or feminist revisionist mythology. So, why it has become so popular and what is the need of it? Retelling is undoubtedly one of the most influential trends in postmodern literature. So, let's see the first point here, which is reclaiming women's narratives. So, the feminist era of retelling seeks to bring to light women's stories that have been historically marginalized or overlooked or misrepresented. And by doing that, coming to the second point, it challenges traditional gender roles and stereotypes present in original stories. Characters are given agency and complexity beyond their stereotypical portrayals. The retellings also critique the patriarchal structures and power dynamics present in original narratives. They shed light on the ways women have been oppressed and silenced in these stories. Retellings by giving voice to muted groups also brings out intersectionality and thereby paving way for the subversion of power dynamics. So now moving forward to Kavitha Kane's novels. So she has written 7 novels till now, as I already told, namely Karna's Wife, Sita's Sister, Menka's Choice, Lanka's Princess, Fisher Queen's Dynasty, Ahalya's Awakening, and her most recent novel is Saraswati's Gift. Now talking about Saraswati, the most recent novel published by Kavitha Kane is Saraswati's Gift. Despite being her the goddess of arts, music, and knowledge, we barely know much about her. She is known as the Lost River and seen as a singular goddess, never as a part of a couple like Shiva Parvati or Lakshmi Narayan. We never hear Saraswati Brahma or Brahma Saraswati. She is a singular and independent goddess. The novel explores Saraswati's relationship and marriage with her creator Brahma. Through Saraswati, Kane has discussed many issues like motherhood, marriage, etc. So let's delve in the issues one by one in detail. Motherhood can bring immense joy, a sense of purpose, and deep emotional connections with one's child. However, motherhood, as necessary as society deems it to be, comes with many challenges like physical and emotional toll on the mother, financial strain, and loss of identity. In the novel, Goddess Saraswati challenges the idea that the biggest happiness of a woman is being a mother. And it is absolutely necessary for her to be a mother to be called complete. In the novel, the goddess says, a woman's existence is more complex, more compelling than procreating. But again, that's something only she can decide. Goddess Saraswati, in this short sentence, gave the very gist of what women mean when they say complete autonomy on their bodies. These huge decisions are still taken by husbands and families with very little concern about women's aspirations. While post-feminism advocates for autonomy and individuality, women still feel pressurized to fill into societal expectations of motherhood. When it comes to procreation, the bodily autonomy is decreasing day by day. Women who cannot procreate succumb to the pressure and sometimes opt for IVF, which is a boon for some women, but it's extremely expensive, with every cycle costing between 1 to 1.5 lakhs. And it hardly happens in one cycle. So, along with psychological pressure, women are burdened with financial pressure. Even in a country like even in a country like United States of America, women are fighting for reproductive freedom. Abortion has previously been deemed a constitutional right by the Supreme Court, although this was reversed in 2022. This was a very famous news, as you all know. India has comparatively flexible laws regarding abortion and is allowed in many cases of women being unfit or child being unfit, or if the child is the result of a rape. But there is no mention of choice. Every law in favor of abortion in India is circumstantial, and there is absolutely no discussion or no mention of choice or autonomy. In another novel, Menka's Choice, Menka wants to be a mother and wants a family, but she cannot because she's a nymph made to seduce men. Her role in our mythology is reduced to an object made to fulfill larger purposes of men. Through these two novels, Kane brings out two women's desires on motherhood. We cannot confine women to a particular identity as it's seen in the cases of Saraswati and Menka. The other important issue discussed is marriage. So there is no doubt in the fact that marriage is a patriarchal institution responsible for strengthening gender roles. The criticism of marriage began as early as in 300 BC, with Plato calling marriage the enemy of equality. The novel Saraswati's Gift criticizes marriage through the independent goddess Saraswati. Simone de Beauvoir, in her seminal feminist text, The Second Sex, wrote, "Marriage has always been a very different thing for a man and for a woman." According to her, the institution of marriage is not based on a footing of equality. Another novel that highlights the issues regarding marriage is Sita's sister, which is Urmila's story, who is also Lakshman's wife. The novel highlights the toll marriage takes on women with constant expectations. The sacrificial woman who puts husband and children first is put on a verbal pedestal by the society. But while doing so, they lose their own identity. The novel also criticizes men's over inclination towards their paternal duties. In the novel, Urmila asks, is there no dharma of the husband for his wife? Is it always about the father, sons, and brothers? Our patriarchal society in heterosexual marriages expect a woman to devote herself to a husband's family and detach herself from maternal relations. The society also criticizes Urmila for not following Lakshman to exile, just as Sita did. But the novel justifies this stand of Urmila by telling her story in which she has an independent identity. She loves Lakshman, but is not dependent on him. She chooses to stay in Ayodhya to take care of her in-laws and patiently wait for Lakshman while he fulfilled his dharma of protecting his brother and sister-in-law. She also is the only one who criticizes Ram for Sita's Agni Pariksha when no one else did. According to Carol Gilligan and Naomi Snyder, this is called the internalization of patriarchy. When patriarchy is so hardwired in our brains that we often don't question the discriminations happening around us, or it is so hardwired that we don't even recognize the discriminations happening around us. Now, coming to the next novel, Ahalya's Awakening. We all are familiar with Ahalya's story and her plight. Cursed by her husband Rishi Gautama and raped by Indra, Ahalya becomes a pitiful and revered figure in her myths. This novel also highlights the patriarchal norms in marriage and the issue of bodily autonomy. Ahalya was a victim, yet her husband felt it was well under his rights to curse her, as if her body belongs to him. The novel discusses victim blaming in rape cases and also the issue of infidelity. Luce Irigaray, in her work Women on the Market, has talked about how society renders woman a commodity to be exchanged. She says, the society we know, our own culture, is based on the exchange of women. Irigary's theory on the commodification of women resonates with Ahalya's assault, objectification, and commodification, which gives the impression that women are similar to a property to be owned and kept. You'll be surprised to know that the word husband itself comes from an old Norse word which means master of the house or property. It comes from agriculture, that means someone who holds land, as in animal husbandry. The origin of this word is a testament in itself to what marriage stood for and still stands in some ways. Women are treated as mere lifeless property without desires, aspirations, or any rights. This problem seems small because it has existed in subtle ways for so long. But I want to highlight the gravity of this situation by sharing this news article. According to this article from BBC, the data released by NCRB, that is National Crimes Record Bureau, shows nearly 22,000 housewives took their own lives in 2020. That's an average of 61 suicides every day and one in every 25 minutes. Housewives accounted for more than 50% of the total women who killed themselves in 2020. This issue of the oppression of married women in our fellow-centric society is much more dire than we think. Moving on to Lanka's princess, we know more about Shurpanakha's story through this novel. Not many people are even familiar with her real name, which is Meenakshi. Because of the grand narrative set over years, we don't even know the real name given by her parents to her, which is Meenakshi. And we know her by Shurpanakha, which means a demoness with long nails. This novel talks about the binary of Devi and devil in our myths. Sita's character is often exemplified in opposition to Shurpanakha. And the way we categorize our world in binaries might seem harmless at first, but it results into imbalance of power and reduction of women into stereotypes. This binary opposition exists in all myths. For example, the characters of Lilith and Eve in Bible, where Lilith is the demoness for not being a subservient woman to her husband, and Eve is the respected woman who gets to stay in the Garden of Eden. This novel also talks about the hypocritical beauty standards of our society. Shurpanakha was dark, and her mother Kaxi says in the novel, how is this dark monkey going to bring us good fortune? Who is going to marry her? Hence, Shurpanakha is doubly marginalized by patriarchy and by her skin color. Indians are obsessed with fair skin. Just open the TV and you can see it in the advertisements. Only naming fair and lovely to glow and lovely won't change society's bias set over years. In our myths also, Kali is shown as dark, the fierce, the uncontrollable goddess. But Gauri, who is a married, docile goddess, is fair. There is no negative portrayal of dark-skinned goddess in Hindu myths, but there is a distinct contrast between them and their peers. White or fair is seen as pure, ascetic, and serene, while dark is seen as energetic, mischievous, fearless, and uncontrollable. In this respect, Shurpanakha had to be dark because she is that uncontrollable woman or uncontrollable demoness. The ideal set of a perfect woman in India are very much influenced by Western countries. Anything that deviates from those standards set by the Occident is labeled as abnormal or unnatural. Women in India are curvier and darker and look very different from their Western counterparts. And here the struggle of women to reach ideal beauty standards start. Germaine Greer, in her work, The Whole Woman, has discussed in detail the man-made standards of beauty imposed on women. She has raised awareness on bleaching the skin, cosmetic surgeries, implants, etc. So Shurpanakha, who is always ridiculed and neglected in her own home, finds solace in Vidyajiva and marries him against the wishes of her family and without the permission of Ravan. So Ravan later kills Vidyajiva. This is honor killing, if we go by the classical definition. The novel poignantly highlights this prevalent problem of honor killing unique to our Indian subcontinent. And it results from endogamy, the practice of endogamy. So, endogamy is the custom of marrying only within the limits of a community, clan, or tribe. And people who do not abide by this dishonor the family. Honor killings are more common than we think. Reliable figures are hard to obtain because of the lack of both clear definition of honor and a coherent criteria. Shurpanakha is seen as responsible for instigating Ravan to take revenge on Ram for her dishonor and eventually starting a war. She is the femme fatale of Ramayana. Femme fatale refers to an alluring woman who often leads men into dangerous or destructive situations. This image of woman is stereotypical since it reduces agency to sexual allure, neglecting other attributes and hence limits their representation. It is also responsible for objectifying women. The next character of the novel, the Fisher Queen's dynasty, Satyavati, is also an ambitious woman, a matriarch of Kuru clan, the the femme fatale of Mahabharata, who seduced King Shantanu to become the queen from a low-class fisher girl. She is also seen as destroying Devvrat or Bhishma's life by usurping his throne. Her story of sacrifices, love for her children and husband, and particularly for her clan, never comes to light because she is hidden under the veil of a Machiavellian woman. Satyavati was a low caste woman, which brings out intersectionality in Kavitha Kane's novels. Her novel on Satyavati, as well as Uruvi, highlights the Brahminical patriarchy and the frustrations of Saraswati and Uruvi of belonging to a low caste community. Uruvi, the wife of Karna, discussed in the novel Karna's Wife, was a Kshatriya princess who married Karna, an outcast, a Sudputra. The novel, through Uruvi's character, brings out the need for discussions on Dalit rights in mainstream feminist discourse, calling for a more inclusive approach. Caste privileged feminists have always been at the forefront of Indian feminist movements, and Indian mainstream feminism has always neglected the question of caste. However, the inclusion of Dalit feminist theory has substantially bolstered the feminist aspirations of freedom, solidarity, and equality. So I think I've discussed almost all the issues covered in our novels. So lastly, I also want to talk about the gender-based violence, which we can find in almost all the novels of Kavitha Kane. So be it Sita's Agni Pariksha, Draupadi's humiliation, or Ahalya's curse, assault, rape, and violence have been a prominent theme in our myths. In our phallocentric society, the ownership of men over women's bodies first led to the objectification of women and later on led to violence in many forms. The direct violence in the form of rape, beating, or even psychological harassment are a result of structural and cultural violence in our myths. These invisible forms of violence are not overtly visible in the society, but they promote visible or direct violence. I want to explain my point further by using Johan Galtung's theory of violence triangle, which I have shown in the slide. So Johan Galtung is a Norwegian sociologist who explained violence in terms of its three dimensions: direct, structural, and cultural. He depicted these he depicted these three forms of violence as arms of a triangle. Structural violence results from injustice and inequality built into the structure of society, resulting in unequal distribution of power. Our society treats women as a second sex, and hence this structural inequality edged in our society results in direct violence. Ahalya's rape and curse and Draupadi's humiliation are examples of this. Violence against lower caste women, like the harassment and ostracization faced by Satyavati and Uruvi, is also a form of structural violence, resulting from unequal division of power amongst various castes in the society. The honor killing of Shurpanakha's husband is a form of cultural violence, resulting from prevailing beliefs. This includes prejudices and stereotypes. Along with honor killing, female genital mutilation, witch hunt, etc., are also the examples of cultural violence, which contributes to direct violence. So, Galtung's violence triangle can give us great insight to understand the gender-based violence in our myths and in the novels of Kavitha Kane. So what is so now we will see what is the post feminism's influence on Indian women. Why is it helpful particularly to the women of our country and our Indian subcontinent? So post feminism's individualistic approach can be used to give voice to women of all cultures, castes and ethnicities of India. Some issues like child marriage, dowry, honor killings, ostracization of Dalits, female infanticide, etc., has been absent in mainstream feminism. The unique challenges Indian women face stem from the complex interplay between traditional norms, social dynamics, economic disparities, and cultural expectations. Post feminism's broader framework can prove to be a boon for women of India and Indian subcontinent in highlighting their issues. But post feminism certainly has some limitations. So let's see them. Let's see the first point in the slide that says the lack of political engagement. So post feminism's avoidance of political activism and grassroots movements might limit its impact on policy changes and societal transformations because it primarily talks about personal empowerment. Post feminism also simplifies feminism by misrepresenting the complexity of feminist theories, leading to a diluted understanding of the historical struggles and ongoing challenges faced by women. It surely undermines the work done by earlier feminists and the power of collective identity and sisterhood, which was the backbone of many successful feminist movements. And according to the last point, post feminism gives conflicting messages. Certainly, it does give conflicting messages sometimes by simultaneously drawing from earlier waves and distancing itself from the earlier waves. So at the same time, it is also drawing from and also distancing itself. So it certainly gives some contradictory messages. So I'll end this session by again quoting the question I've asked in the beginning. What do young women of 21st century India want? And the answer is not that simple. Every woman is unique, has her individual attributes and challenges. And addressing these challenges requires a nuanced approach that values both culture, collective identity, and individual agency. That's why post feminism is important for our generation, that is composed of multiple identities. Ensuring that feminism addresses the needs of all women is crucial for its continued relevance and impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kuhoo, for such a wonderful lecture on this topic of covert misogyny. Now we will have a few words on this lecture, about her views on this lecture. Dr. Archana Singh, ma'am, over to you, ma'am. Um,
Okay. So, my audible. Can you listen to me? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
So, Kuhu, first of all, congratulations. Really, it was a wonderful lecture you have delivered. It was very interesting, very thought-provoking, and very insightful. You have covered all the aspects of feminism, post-feminism, and also you have talked uh, about what are the advantages of this feminism and what are the definitions and what are the opinions of others about this feminism and post-feminism. So at the very outset or in the beginning of your lecture, you have talked about the three waves, and the first wave you have discussed about this first wave in length, that between 18th and 19th century, this wave was there. And also you have talked about that in the first wave, there was what actually women have achieved: right to vote, property rights, and women's education, etc. And in the second wave that you have talked about, the second wave which began in 1960s, and the issues were there: sexuality, family, domesticity, the workplace, reproductive rights, etc. And actually, it was a re-evaluation of traditional gender roles in society and an end to sexist discrimination. Then you have talked about the third wave, which began in early 1990s, achieved more equality and rights for women. And now it is focusing, or now it is, now this third wave was tackling problems that still existed. So this third wave actually embraced the spirit of just spirit of a kind of violence, that instead of reformation, they talked about feminist encouragement women to express their sexuality and individuality. And this wave was more inclusive when it came to race and gender. Then you have talked about Kavitha Kane's novels. All the novels you have discussed and the thematic analysis of all the novels were very just fruitful or very interesting when you have talked about the heroines of Kavitha Kane's novels. So one thing which I have noticed, that in all the novels, there were many main characters, many just important characters in the novels. But instead of taking main heroines or main characters, Kavitha Kane has discussed all the marginalized characters, even some characters about whom we don't know anything. But Kavitha Kane's novels or Kavitha Kane's writings have made those characters so important that after reading or after going through her novels, it seems that these characters, which were marginalized for us, now they have become very important. So really, it's a very beautiful and very thought-provoking novels written by Kavitha Kane. And a lot of things can be discussed, a lot of things can be said or interpreted about her novels. So many things which I want to know about her novels, and after the discussions or what you have presented, I have many questions in my mind. So first thing, in one of your slides, you have written that there are many masters of retelling mythology, like Amish Tripathi, Chitra Banerjee, and many more writers were there. Why have you chosen only Kavitha Kane? Yes. What
Yes.
makes, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your question. Yes, ma'am. So I have said already that the works on revisionist mythology are an integral part of our postmodern literature, and so many authors are writing in this arena. But I find Kavitha Kane to be very unique for her perspective, because she goes one step ahead by talking about the women in the margins of the margin. So, for example, in Karna's wife, Kavitha Kane has discussed about Karna's wife Uruvi. So Karna is already at the margin cause of his caste, and so his wife Uruvi is doubly marginalized due to her gender and caste. Um, so so this is one of the examples where Kavitha Kane has really brought out a woman. We never thought about that she'll be even discussed in mainstream feminist literature. And second, talking about her unique perspective, now the second point, I think the novel Saraswati's Gift also shows the unique perspective of Kavitha Kane, because no one else has talked about Saraswati the way Kane does. uh, s- uh, she's the goddess of knowledge, arts, and music, and we know so very less. I didn't know much about her before reading this novel, although we worship her on a daily basis in our colleges, in our schools. So it's astounding and baffling to know that the goddess of knowledge has no seminal works dedicated to her. And one more point is that Kavitha Kane doesn't paint black white or white black. She simply tells her story, tells their story. She's not concerned with rectifying someone's character or clarifying on someone's behalf. She just tells their story as it is. And one more thing I would like to add here is the contemporary relevance of her novels. So Kane, although talks about the mythical characters, mythological women of her mythology, but she contemporizes them and addresses the issues pertaining to modern women, like the issues related to motherhood, honor killing, witch hunt, Dalit ostracization, etc., are still seen in our society. So Kane's novels highlight 21st century women's issues and can be used to motivate our generation and also the upcoming generation. So because of these traits, I think Kane is a very unique author, and that's why I've chosen her today.
Thank you. Really, really brilliant answer. Now, one more question I want to ask. Uh, you have talked about Lanka's princess, and there you have discussed about Lakshman's deed of disfiguring Suparnakha. He has cut her nose. So, my question to you is, being a woman, can you justify Lakshman's deed of disfiguring Suparnakha?
Definitely not, ma'am. Definitely not. I do not think Lakshman did the right thing by disfiguring Shurpnakha. So when Shurpnakha approached Ram and Lakshman, expressing her desire to be with them, they started making fun of her. And then Shurpnakha got angry, they got angry, and they disfigured her. So a bold woman, a forward woman's assault in our society usually ends up in victim blaming. That has been happening in the case of Shurpnakha till now. And we usually say, like in even in the like the mainstream culture, she asked for it. I mean, this phrase has become very common nowadays. She asked for it. So when we see a bold woman getting assaulted, the first thing comes, well, she asked for it. So the stereotypical beliefs that a woman is a second sex results in violence against Shurpnakha. Women are still expected to be sexually submissive in our society. Not in our society, everywhere. They are expected to be sexually submissive. So in the novel, Shurpnakha herself asks, "Why didn't they just say no? Why did they have to disfigure me? They could have just said no, right?" So, and actually, there was no need to do that because Ram and Lakshman both are very powerful. They don't need to disfigure a woman. They're so powerful that they could have just said no and turned her around. But by cutting her nose, which means insulting someone, like in Hindi we say naak kaat dena, which is a symbolic gesture, right? So it is a symbolic gesture of kind of insulting someone. So it also by this deed, Lakshman also tries to tell the women of the society that what should happen with bold women who are sexually promiscuous. So I definitely stand very much against this deed of Lakshman's of disfiguring a woman.
Yes. Thank you. Um, Kuhoo, you have covered almost all aspects of feminism, post-feminism, and you have talked in detail about Kavitha Kane's novels. But I think you have missed one thing, because nowadays ecofeminism is a very popular word. So, have you heard about this ecofeminism? And do you find any reference of ecofeminism in Kane's novel?
Yes, ma'am. Definitely, ecofeminism is quite famous these days, and so many so many discussions are happening over it. And Kavitha Kane, definitely being the contemporary famous author of her times, she has touched upon this topic. And she talks about ecofeminism and the parallels between the women and the nature and the oppression of women, equivalent to oppression of nature. So particularly, she talks about it in Saraswati's gift. In the novel, the goddess Saraswati wants to leave Earth and mankind while everyone is trying to stop her. And she justifies her stand by calling out humans for their atrocities on nature as well as other human beings. The river Saraswati starts withering up when she saw men after being blessed with knowledge by goddess Saraswati, using it to dispel ignorance by indulging in mindless violence. Saraswati is a mythical river now, and recently government has, as we all know, like it is in the news that government is trying to revive the river. But the symbolic meaning of the river disappearing from earth and from the reach of mankind, I think, is quite intriguing in this novel. So definitely, she has talked about it.
Thank you. Here I want to express my views. Um, have you ever heard about these two lines that have been written in Manu Smriti? Yatra naryastu pujyante, ramante tatra devta. Means we should worship, or women are like goddesses. And when I talk about Hindi poet Maithili Sharan Gupta, he wrote, "Hi अबला जीवन तेरी यही कहानी आंचल में है दूध और आंखों में पानी." Means there are two pictures of women. One where she is being treated just like a goddess, and secondly when women has been depicted by this Hindi poet like a poor, like a helpless woman who doesn't have any power. So there are two things. One, that woman is very superior to us. She is like a goddess. And secondly, she is very inferior. She is helpless. She is very poor. She doesn't have any power. So what do you think? That what does feminism actually mean? Equality or superiority or something else? What is actually the meaning of feminism as per your opinion? Miss, I want to know your opinion about this. Have you got my question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. First, I want to address that those poems, very beautiful poems from Maithili Sharan Gupta, and he has also written a very beautiful poem on Urmila itself, Urmila also, and today only I've read it. So yeah, but I have a huge problem. Not I, like generally there is a huge issue in comparing a woman to a goddess, because when you put a woman on a pedestal by calling her a goddess, you give her so much you burden her with so much expectations that if she behaves even in uh, a slightly different way, a slightly in a way which a human is supposed to behave, because humans are supposed to make mistakes, right? She is immediately called out for that. So I have talked about the binary of Devi and Devil in while I was discussing Lanka's princess, and again I'll say that this binary in which we are living has to be crushed, because this both representations are very stereotypical and definitely reduces agency. And secondly, about feminism. So yes, feminism has talked about equality. Sometimes people have accused feminism of being so radical that women want to be superior to men, or they are men haters. I mean, feminists are generally called angry men haters. So for me, I think according to me, what I personally think is we need to stop looking at men as yardstick. I mean, we have set them as a benchmark that what they do, we want to do that. So we need not to be equal to men and do what they do. We both are very different genders. We cannot do the same things in the same way. So I think we should focus on personal empowerment And then we can achieve equality, equal space, and a loud, powerful voice if we focus just on ourselves. Like in Saraswati's gift, Kavitha Karne doesn't talk about Saraswati being equal to Brahma or any other god. I mean, the goddess is independent. She just talks about herself, her identity, her agency. She is not comparing herself with a man that he does this, I want to know. She is unique in her own experiences, in her own abilities, and a man is has his own abilities. So we need to stop looking at man as yardstick or benchmark for equality. So that's my view on feminism.
Okay. Thank you. Very true. If
Thank you.
really you want to make this world, because this is what mankind, if really you want to make this world, is your call this world instead of calling mankind, if you want to call it humankind, then you have to come out of the tendency of ladies first. Then you have to talk about the equality. Because now you are saying, because Shakespeare is saying that the world would be imperfect without the presence of women. What does he mean? That merely the presence of women can make this world beautiful? No. He wants to, or we have to just take out the meaning from this statement that we have to be very skillful, we have to be very smart, we have to be very means educated, and we have to be very perfect in the sense of intellectuality. So these are the things. If you really want to talk about the equality, in my views, feminism is equality. There is no comparison between a man and a woman because they both have their own words. So now I just want to say here that feminism means equality. We want to live our own life. We have to be very intellectual. We have to be very perfect. We have to be very skillful. We have to just go with the world. We have to just be very much perfect. Or what is going on? What is just being invented in this era, just like a computer or everything. We have to be perfect in all these things. Then only we can achieve the equality. If we say that being a woman, we want this type of facility, we want this type of extra advantage or extra facility, then I think this is wrong. When we talk about equality, we have to be perfect in all the fields. So, is there any other question? Is there any other question?
Yes, ma'am, we have a respondent for today's session. Excuse me. Sorry for the inconvenience. So, today's the session's respondent is Miss Atida, Dr. Atida K. Uni, Assistant Professor with the Research and Postgraduate Department of English, St. Aloysius College, Thrissur. I welcome ma'am, Atida ma'am.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Yeah.
If you can please switch on your video, that would be really nice.
Actually, I'm not in a position to switch on the camera.
It's okay, ma'am.
Okay.
At your convenience.
Thank you, ma'am. So, first of all, congratulations, Miss Kuhoo, ma'am, on delivering an exceptional talk on covert misogyny, a post-feminist study of Indian myths through Kavitha Khane's novels. So I think that your in-depth exploration of crucial issues such as gender and caste-based violence, female infanticide, then caste and gender intersectionality, then honor killing, these are very truly enlightening. Then your presentation adeptly highlighted the complexities of these challenges and how a post-feminist perspective can offer fresh insights into addressing them. So, in my opinion, in Kavitha Khanna's novels, we come across various issues. So, one such issue is gender and caste-based violence. So through Indian myths, Kavitha Khan's novels, we can see that it mirrors the harsh realities of gender and caste-based violence that persists in our society. So through post-feminism, I think we can empower is to challenge the narratives that perpetuate such injustices, and we can seek a change. Likewise, there are many other issues we can see in these novels, like child marriage, then female infanticide. So, through post feminism, it urges us to engage with these narratives, urging us to confront the dark corners of our cultural history and to strive for a more equitable future. And then, as we reflect on this enlightening journey through the realms of Indian myths and post feminism, let us remember that these narratives offer not the stories of the past, but the lessons for our present and aspirations for a more equitable future. So, actually, I'm really thankful for such a wonderful presentation. I have a question for you. Do you think there is a potential conflict between honoring the work of earlier feminists and adopting post feminist perspectives? How might we acknowledge both without erasing the contributions of either movement?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your question. Ma'am, actually post feminism definitely contradicts, and it has contradicts earlier feminist movements, and it has its limitations and everything. But definitely there are many things that the earlier waves of feminism did, which post feminism does recognizes. Like I have talked it in my presentation also, that there are a very few things, like 2 3 things that post feminism doesn't agree with when it comes to earlier feminist movements. But there are things like intersectionality. So as I told you, that third wave was all like very much focused on intersectionality, because it was mainly about black women in USA and in European countries. But post-feminism, by talking about empowering individual women and by talking about personal empowerment, definitely acknowledges the intersectionality that has been talked about in earlier feminist movement. It has not been talked about in third wave. It has also been discussed in the second wave. So it has been going on for a while. And post-feminism doesn't call it intersectionality, but it calls it individual empowerment, which is I think pretty much the same thing, because both talk about giving marginalized women a voice, women who don't identify with the mainstream feminist movements. And second thing I think that is very common between earlier waves of feminism and post feminism is that um, very I think a very important thing is the post feminism's ability and its kind of re-emergence in talking about the issues that have been left in the earlier waves. I mean, earlier waves, from the very first wave, they were talking about reproductive rights, reproductive freedom, this and that. And now post feminism came and it kind of addressed ki, oh, you have been talking about these things, it has been not reached yet. So post feminism, by talking about individual empowerment, by talking about choice on abortion laws, on IVF, on reproductive laws, or in other beauty myths also, post feminism does talk about a lot about, in fact, beauty myths and all. So it definitely acknowledges the previous moments. It kind of reacts to it, but not always in a negative way. It kind of tries to also tell them ki, oh, you have done this wrong, let's take it in this way, and perhaps in this way we can further our movement and make this feminist movement more relevant. So I think the main, and again I'll say, the main thing is intersectionality. I don't think the previous movements can fulfill or can give voice to the muted groups, even with the third wave and Rebecca Walker, Alice Walker, Bell Hooks. I mean, so many people tried to kind of talk about muted groups. But now also, particularly in India, like the problems with black women and particularly Indian women are very different. I mean, they are in the margins there, I get it, but in India, the women who are in the margins, there are women who are in the margins of the margins. I mean, if we look at the caste system only, like there is hierarchy, right? Even in Dalits there is hierarchy. So this lower caste person who is kind of oppressed by the upper caste also oppresses the caste lower than that. So where can we, we cannot apply just the concept of intersectionality to just, give voice to these women. We have to, post-feminism kind of acknowledges intersectionality and says, for a country like India, where there is this hierarchy of women being lowers of the lower caste. So when we talk about these women, I think post-feminism can come in handy and can give a lot of answers to such questions. So again, the Indian subcontinent is very unique in its issues, and I think this particularly the intersectionality issue is being can be solved by using post-feminism.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Now the platform is open for discussions. If you have any suggestions, if you have any comments, you can directly have a conversation, or you can either post it in the chat box.
Hello.
Yes, Kartika.
Good evening, all. Am I audible to you?
Yes, you are.
My name is Dr. Karthika. I completed my PhD under the guideship of Dr. Betsy Paul, and my thesis is on the popularity of mythological retellings in Indian English literary market. I've dealt with authors like Amish Tripathi, Anand Neelakandan, Devdutt Patnaik, and Kavitha Kane. I've dealt with her 3 novels, Karna's Wife, Sita's Sister, and Menaka's Choice. And I have some different views to share here, because my approach was from the market point of view, how these works have market value in Indian literary market. Kavitha Kane's novels come under the category of feminist revisionist myth making. She deals with marginalized characters. Her novels employ very interesting characters and simple language. All these are part of her intrinsic marketing tactics. But when I analyze the characters, I found that some of her characters are pretty much stereotypes. For example, in the case of Menaka's Choice, the title itself is ironic because Menaka does not have a choice in any aspect of her life. She gives up her 2 daughters because Apsaras are forbidden to be mothers. She goes to earth as per the order of Indra to seduce the sage Vishwamitra, and then when Indra orders, she returns to heaven, leaving behind Vishwamitra and her daughter Shakuntala. And in the novel, she expresses her protest to Indra by wearing a sulking face, by refusing to smile at Indra likewise. And at the end, she consoles herself, thinking that someday Indra will get punishment for his misdeeds. I don't think she has much of a choice in her life. And in the case of the novel, Karna's Wife, Kuhoo has discussed about the character of Uruvi, but Kavitha Kane has herself told that Uruvi is a fictional character. The protagonist, Uruvi, is not a real character from Mahabharata. She's just a fictional character. She's a Kshatriya princess who rebels against the caste barriers and marries the Sutaputra Karna. But Karna's real wife, Vrishali, she's a secondary character in the novel. Vrishali, who is from the lower caste, she's from the Suta caste, is even more marginalized in this novel also. She's portrayed as a very meek woman, and it takes a fictional Kshatriya princess to be the source of motivation and true love for Karna. Why so? Kavitha Kane, being a popular writer, I think she doesn't want to invite serious issues like banning and burning. So she followed a very convenient path to appease the majority. I think so. And then Uruvi, and some of her characters are also very forgiving and compromising. For an example, in the case of Uruvi, when in the final chapter, Pandavas, when they realized Karna was their elder brother, they come to seek the forgiveness of Uruvi. Uruvi forgives them and she goes with them. whereas Vrishali does not go with them. She commits suicide. And but Kavitha Kane portrays Uruvi as the protagonist and not Vrishali, who is the actual marginalized character. I think so. Then, mm, personally, after in my thesis, I've only dealt with these three novels. I've not read the other novels. Thank you, Kuhoo, for introducing the other novels by Kavitha Kane. I've not read them. I took the novels published between 2005 and 2015 for my thesis. I studied the marketability of these novels in the present Indian literary market. Thank you. Thank you, Betsy, ma'am, for organizing such a wonderful platform to share my views. Thank you, Dr. Archana Singh, for your insightful remarks. And thank you, Kuhoo Singh, for your wonderful presentation. Thank you. I think we have approached the same novelist from different perspectives. Yours was from the feminist perspective, whereas mine was from the market view. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Karthika. I think, Kuhu ma'am, you have a question here in the chat box. I will read it for you. The question is from Sivya Vasudevan. Her question is, can we do a Sino-feminist reading of any mythological characters? And also, are there any characters that rejected nature and embraced technology to become opposed women? Is the question clear for you, ma'am? Should I repeat?
Hello. Yeah, I can see the questions in the chat box now. It was not opening before. Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, there are two questions. I think, can we do a xenofeminist reading of any mythological characters? Definitely, I have not approached these novels from that perspective, and I mean, fourth wave feminism, zero wave, xenofeminism, fourth wave feminism, or post feminism. I mean, all have arrived now. Definitely, you can do that. And are there any characters that I have not done that, so I cannot tell much about it because that's not my approach to these novels. And are there any characters that rejected nature and embraced technology to become a post woman? So there might be, but not in the novels of Kavitha Kane. So these things I have not explored and I have not seen in her novels. Her novels are quite traditional, quite in the line of the famous retellings that have been happening recently. She's just a bit different because she talks about certain women which no one else has talked about. But definitely, there are definitely not any characters that rejected nature. Because Saraswati's example I've given you, she kind of stands for this mankind's oppression of nature and everything, and she leaves humanity to fend for itself because she's like, they don't even need the knowledge given by me. And secondly, definitely nature, the aspect of nature also comes in the novel of Karna's wife, where Uruvi is a natural healer. So she loves nature. She likes to spend time in nature, and because of her closeness and proximity with nature, she takes up some natural methods and kind of heals people with that. So yeah, but there is no rejection of nature because it does not happen in feminist novels. And later, I there's some other question also. No, that was it. Okay, yeah. So that was my answer
And
to you.
you want to give some response to Dr. Karthika? Who?
Um, Yes, ma'am. I think her, because she has already done her PhD and I'm halfway through it, so I'm a little less confident to, speak in front of someone who has already gotten her degree and everything. But on one point, I do not agree or do not kind of, you know, not agreeing is a strong term, but yeah, I am a bit in a difference of opinion about that novel about Karna's wife, where she has not taken Rushali and she has taken Uruvi to highlight the problem of Dalit feminism or ostracization of women of a particular caste. I think it's not to appease the majority of the people or anything. I don't think she's trying to market her books in that way. I think I have read the novel, and the character of Rushali is being depicted as a very meek woman who never speaks against any atrocities happening against her or her husband. She just talks about, she's only concerned about Karna's well-being, his friendship with Duryodhan, which was not good for him, definitely. She constantly criticized that, but in the novel itself, she says that I've stopped saying anything to Karna because he doesn't listen to me. But Uruvi, being an empowered woman, being a woman who comes from a Kshatriya class, and suddenly she sees this ostracization. I think when you're born with that thing, you kind of internalize that ostracization and being an outcast. But coming from a Rajput family, like a Kshatriya princess, suddenly she saw this kind of harassment happening in the name of caste, and she spoke against it. And she spoke against it in many occasions throughout the novel. She kind of became Karna's inner voice and guiding him ki, oh, society is doing this to you, but you don't react to it. You walk in the path of dharma, in the path of good karma. So I think Kane choosing Uruvi is a very powerful move, and if she has chosen Rushali, there would be nothing to write, because she is a meek woman. She kind of just gives up in the circumstances in that scenario. And second thing, the character of Urvi comes from a South Indian interpretation of Ramayana. I think Tamil Ramayana. I'm not 100% sure, but it is somewhere from South India, and she comes from there. So there are, as we all know, there are many versions of Ramayana and Mahabharata in whole of India. Like you go from north to south, and the wives of gods changes, the number of children of the gods changes. Some god stands for something in North India, and it stands for something completely different in South India. So, because of these different interpretations, Kavitha Kane has very, intelligently chose one character from a very less talked about Ramayana interpretation from South India, and she's taken up that character and used her to talk about ostracization of Dalits. And I think Uruvi is the perfect character to kind of talk about that thing.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kuhoo. Any other questions or any suggestions?
I'm sure that these are points of uh, what shall I say? We should make a long discussion on of all these issues, because I'm sure that Kartika will have to say her own views on this, and there will be others too. But maybe because it is getting late, we will stop this part of the discussion now, and you can ask for other questions. And this is the aim of this sort of a program. We need to have opposing ideas, and we need to discuss on these ideas, and serious deliberations should be there whether these are the correct views. And once we start talking about and discussing, our own ideas will change. We will learn a lot more than what we were in the beginning. We will be a different person once we finish such a program. And that is the aim of Chrysalis. Okay, please continue, Mira.
Sorry, yes, ma'am. Any other questions? If you have, you can be a bit fast in directing your questions. Any questions? Sorry, there is one more question in the chat box. Nowadays, Indian literature is flooded with mythological books. What is the reason behind the popularity of mythological writings? Why do writers choose mythology as a medium to present contemporary issues? And this question is by Shruti Krishnadas. Kuhoo, ma'am, over to you.
Yes, thank you for this question, Shruti. So, yes, nowadays, again, I'll say the same thing. Revisionist mythology is an integral part of postmodern literature, and we are seeing so many authors writing in this arena. So, I think, and they are choosing mythology to kind of highlight the contemporary issues. I mean, the issues which we face today. I mean, 5,000 years ago, when when the setup of these mythological stories was there. I mean, she has people are taking characters from that time and contemporizing them and using them now. I think the very important, I think the very first reason, the first and foremost reason for that happening, like why people are choosing mythology, is because of the popularity of mythology. I think when children are born, the very first thing they are told is the story of Ram, how he rescued Sita, how Ravan was a bad person, how being being proud is a sin. They give example of Ravan, and even in the lockdown also. I mean, the first most watched. I mean, there was some article in NDTV news or something where it was mentioned that Ramayana and Mahabharata were the most watched shows in during the lockdown also. So even in the lockdown, where people have Netflix, people have Amazon Prime, I mean Hotstar, everything. People have cable, and then also they're watching these shows. I mean, these this speak a lot about Indian thought process and Indian sensibilities. So I think the popularity of myths can be used to highlight the issues that have been going on in the society. And I think the widespread reach of this myths, I mean, from North India to South India, from West to East, everybody knows Ramayana and Mahabharata. So I think Ramayana and Mahabharata are the best way to educate people about issues, because it is the most prevalent thing, I think, in India. We are all joined by this these mythology in every other country. I mean, mythology is kind of the basis of the culture, and our culture is very much based on these myths. So I think mythology is the best reason to reach a wider audience and teach a wider audience about the issues. So I think that's why this myth revisionism is happening these days very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Kuhoo.
Thank you, Shruti. Thank you, Kuhu. Any other questions? Anyone else? Um, if there aren't much questions, shall we wind up? Betsy, ma'am, is it almost time?
I'm sure there are many more questions. The presentation was wonderful, and thank you, Dr. Archana Singh, for chairing it so beautifully. And thank you for Meera and all the organizing team, including Shruti and others, for organizing this so beautifully well. And I hope that the participants will continue with us for our next resilience and further deliberations too. And if any one of the participants want to make a presentation with your serious research, you're also invited to give us your details and your short bio so that we can have a panel of, of interested participants who are capable of making presentations. So once more, I should give a big congrats and thanks to Ms. Kuhoo Singh and Dr. Archana Singh. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much,
And
ma'am.
thank you
Thank you
for
so
all the
much for
participants who
inviting
asked
me.
questions.
Thank you, ma'am. It was truly an enriching experience, and I'm grateful for the platform you provided. So please extend my gratitude to your team and all those involved in making the event a success. So thank you very much, Madam Paul. Thank you.
So have a good night and let's meet next month. The second Thursday of every month, we have Chrysalis.
Thank you
And,
so much.
and we should have more and more discussions because that is the spirit of literature. And because, especially because these days, humanities and literature is undermined and our education policy, everything is changing. We need to make this sort of platforms useful so that we have to talk about these things and assert the importance of such discussions in our lives, in the lives of society, in the life of our nation too. So, wish you all a very good night.
Good night.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, all the participants.
Yes, so there is one more question. Mira, will you answer that?
Yes, yes. The question is from Ash Arvind. I hope that's his real name. How to know about future events? I mean, that's for us, ma'am.
Yeah, I hope you have all registered and you have joined that WhatsApp group so that we can inform you through that group.
Yeah, all informations will be passed on through the WhatsApp group.
Uh, there is also another question about the certificates. Of course, we'll be providing certificates of participation. Just wait for a week. Uh, within few days, we will send the participation certificates.
Okay. Ma'am,
Okay,
this was
there
some
some
of
who haven't
them.
joined the group.
Yeah.
So can we give a link once more?
Sure.
The registration link.
Ma'am, the link is already there in the chat box.
Okay.
Um,
So we invite you all to join through the registration link so that we can inform you about our future events. We are also about to organize an international conference in collaboration with the Journal of Dharma, so that Journal of Dharma is a Web of Science journal, and the selected papers will be published in the Journal of Dharma too. So please participate in all these. You're all welcome to St. Aloysius.
okay, thank you, Betsy ma'am, for your nice words. Now, going on to the official part of winding up today's session of Chrysalis. Thank you, all the participants, and especially those who posted their questions as well as directly raised their questions, and who have made this session really fruitful and enlightening. Thank you, Kuhoo ma'am, for such a wonderful presentation, and thank you, Dr. Archana ma'am, for chairing this session and for enlightening with your own perspectives about the topic. Thank you, Betsy ma'am, once again for giving us such a wonderful platform to share the ideas. And thanks to the whole department and the organizing team to make this program really successful and ongoing successful program. Thank you, everyone, and wish you all a very good night. Hope to have a very good day from tomorrow onwards for everyone. Delighted to see you all and hoping to see you soon for the next sessions. Thank you and thank you.